Welcome to Sink or Swim, presented by Squid Group, your digital marketing partner. Psychedelics and surf. In this podcast, we talk to Bourne Buirski, who has been an industry leader in the fashion space, working at brands like Barker's in New Zealand for the last 10 years. We discuss all things surfing and wave pools, to the impact his family had on his mental health, and how psychedelics have helped him overcome some of his mental health battles. Hope you enjoy it. Sweet. Welcome on to Sink or Swim.
Yeah.
Cool. So, been keen to have a chat with you about a few things. Obviously, one thing being surfing.
Yeah.
Because I know that you're a very passionate surfer, but alongside that, keen to hear a little bit more about like the creative world and how psychedelics can kind of come into that and go from there. So maybe to kick things off, tell me a little bit more about yourself and how and your surfing life.
Okay. Well, I'm 40, somewhere between 41 and 42. I never really like to admit my real age. My wife thinks I'm losing it because of that. But for surfing for me, surfing is my higher power, to be honest, and always has been. Sort of introduced to surfing when I was real young, but I actually bodyboarded for most of my life. And a lot of my friends give me a lot of shit about that.
Is it bodyboarding or boogie boarding?
Boogie boarding, yeah, old school boogie boarding. And I boogie boarded at a sort of like a professional level and surfed, lots of contests back in the day. And I've just always been drawn to the ocean. It was just something that me and my father sort of was the only time we could build a relationship, because he was quite an out of it character, old school hippie, just on another planet really. And that was the only time that we got to connect, was in the water. So he taught me how to surf.
Cool.
And then just literally whenever I get an opportunity to surf, I surf, whether it's onshore or good. It's just my higher power, and what it just relaxes me and helps me get through all sorts of situations. Yeah.
And what kind of surfing do you prefer to do? Are you a longboarder, shortboarder?
I'm a shortboarder, but I like to ride all sorts of different types of boards. Like, I guess for me, the last 5 or 4 years, and a lot of my friends and everybody will see me on social media, has been instead of just being a surfer, like I've made a big thing of trying to progress. Because in my opinion, you're just never too old to learn. So I've done all sorts of coaching with Zen Wallace and Tui Eves and a bunch of other old professional surfers with help with technique stuff. Because a lot of us can surf and we love surfing. But for me, everything in life is about being better at whatever I can be, rather than just accepting the norm. So small little technical issues. And surfing for me is a bunch of things. It's to be better. It's to be better for my family, for my friends. And it just makes me happy. Yeah, I love it.
And so where have you, what would be your coolest sort of wave you've ever seen? Have you surfed much overseas?
I've traveled to Indo only once, because coming from South Africa, it's a real far way to go, and it's expensive. So I've done Fiji, I've done Tabarua 3 or 4 times with my wife. And I've done Indo and Sumatra and a couple of boat trips. Yeah. Haven't traveled a hell of a lot, just because coming from there and having kids and all sorts of things and mortgages, it just makes it quite hard to get away. So not as much as I'd like, but I have. Yeah.
Just thinking about boogie boarding, when I was at Chopu in Tahiti, there was a dude there boogie boarding, and surfers are gnarly, right? It's pretty hectic, stand up, get absolutely tubed in this 8-meter wave. But then the boogie boarding dudes, because they can get in quite a bit deeper, some of them get absolutely worked. Yeah. And it's but then when they come out, it's poof, and they shoot out, but it's...
Yeah, they can get deeper. Although surfing, in the last, say, 2 or 3 years, the level of surfing has changed so much. But boogie boarders generally can get slightly deeper, and they can chip in on a little bit of a peak or something deeper on the reef. Boogie boarding's weird. It went through a stage where it just sort of died, and it seems to be making a resurgence. Because I still love boogie boarding. People laugh at me for that, but those guys are unreal sometimes.
Yeah, that's so gnarly.
Gnarly, yeah.
Yeah. And so with like time that you make into that, we talked about a little bit around like when you can, I think when you have a passion like surfing, you find time for it.
Yeah.
And I guess for me as a business owner as well, I do the same thing where sometimes I'll work later because I know that the surf is good from 7 till 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So you sort of like work that in. Is that how you also structure it? And like, especially because you've also worked more of a corporate life.
Yeah. Well, like you're right. I mean, it's hard because, you know, I've got 2 kids. I've got to be present, and I don't want to be a dad that is just there in the evenings and there in the morning. So it's a real hard juggle to get. But for me, it's like I believe it, and if you really are passionate about something and you want to make it work, there's always a way to make it work. So for me, lifestyle choices around jobs and being upfront with where I work, about having those times and working extra hours and remote is really, really important to me. That's the only way I'd be able to do it. Like, I'm really lucky. I can go and surf this afternoon and work later or get up early tomorrow morning. Whereas, you know, a lot of my friends are clock in, clock out, and that's mentally really hard on a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's a really important conversation that I have to have upfront with my wife, with my kids, and who I work for, that like I need to go surfing. You know, it's better for everyone. And people say, "Oh, that's crazy," you know, like it's just surfing, but it's not. It's my mental health.
Yeah.
So I think that answers the question. You know, like it's about being honest upfront and creating a lifestyle for yourself, because it's possible.
Yeah.
In most cases.
100%.
Yeah.
And I also think that if your employer doesn't agree or understand with that, then it's probably not the right place for you to be.
No, and it's a mutual respect, right? If they say, look, I get it, I'm going to work harder, or I'm going to hustle harder for them because I can go surfing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, if I look at like one of my team, she said, hey, I want to go to the US for 4 months. My partner's going over there for a job. Can I go? And I'm like, yeah. You know what you have to do.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with that as long as the work gets done and you're delivering to that. It's not a 5-year plan that they're going to be based over there, but you know what I mean? Like it's things like that where
totally.
I think it's...
Things have changed, you know, like, and I think a lot of it stems down to the way we were locked down into the whole COVID thing. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist or want to go into that at all, because it is what it is, but that changed the way that we do business, you know, and that in some ways is an advantage to us, the way that we can work remotely, work from anywhere really, unless you're client facing and you've got to see people all the time. So yeah.
Or even medical's gone so remote now. I mean, I know so many people that don't even go to the doctors anymore. They just do it all
online portal, or Zoom,
hectic.
It's good and it's bad, right?
And so tell me about you mentioned your dad was obviously a little bit more hippie life. That's how you got into surfing. There's a perceived perception around, I guess, psychedelics, which we've talked about a little bit, around like what they're used for and the benefits and things like that. But tell me about like a little bit around your experience with that.
So I don't even know how to really say it, but I'm an absolute psychedelic therapist advocate. Like, I think that in my opinion, psychedelics are have the potential to unlock the shackles of human society, and in the right way, in the right setting, with the right people and the right intentions. Personally changed my life completely. You know, I come from a pretty wild background. Dad was, you know, that typical hippie that you see in a magazine, just always on something, or just loose as a goose can be, you know. And I was just a little wild kid running around, so I never really had that proper father, which is fine. But later on in life, it affected me quite a bit, like it would for anyone. You know, there was no direction, or you know, this is what you should be doing. I kind of had to figure it all out myself. My mother was just as wild. And my dad died at a real young age. When I was 18, he passed away. And a lot of that had to do with, I guess, addiction and just the way that he lived his life, which I've got 2 little brothers too, which was pretty hard at that time. And, you know, when you're that age, you you think you're as hard as nails and you just get on with life and you never really stop to deal with that trauma and you just carry on going. Luckily I'm pretty strong. I'm a pretty strong person, so I kind of just learned how to deal with it and try and move on and accept it, where a lot of people will bottle and sift on it, and affects them mentally and just the person that they become because they've never released all that trauma. So I think probably about, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago now, when the psychedelic therapy movement was real, untapped and unknown. I mean, you've got old hippies who believe in it. It wasn't just about going to a trance party and taking drugs and getting off your head. There are movements throughout history where these medicines, specifically plant medicines, were used as tools of therapy. I mean, you only have to go back to the Mayans and the Aztecs days, way back, and there's depictions and pictures of cactuses printed on walls and all sorts of stuff, and that's a medicine that they used way back in the time to deal with trauma, to be able to see things, the future, etc. It's crazy that sounds. So to go back to me, I sort of thought that I was all good and I managed to deal with that past trauma, but obviously I hadn't, and I got to a point where I was drinking a lot of alcohol. Alcohol was a big problem for me. Like in society at the moment, it's accepted to drink a bottle of wine every night, and there's not really anything wrong with that. I've always been the type of person that wants more out of life and me as a person and other people. Yep. So I struggled with alcohol. You could call me a functioning alcoholic. If I say to someone, this is how much that I used to drink, people will say to me, well, that's normal, but it's only normal because society allows us to drink alcohol, and it's the only legal substance. So I think I just got to a point where I'd get to December and, you party all December, have a good time with your friends. I'm going to stop drinking in January, get through January, and then you're back on the gravy train. And I think I got to a point and I was like, I don't want to go back on the gravy train. How am I going to do this? And I just for years and years struggled to get off alcohol. I've got a real strong feeling about alcohol and the consumption of humans and how it affects people. Unless you know how to treat it with a bit of respect, there's nothing wrong with drinking if you do it for certain reasons and at certain times. But the way that we drink is just crazy.
Especially in New Zealand. I mean, it's everywhere. I feel like everywhere. But everywhere. I mean, the culture I think is changing a little bit around the amount of alcohol, especially younger people, I think, are drinking. I feel like it's more normalized now for people to go into a party and actually not drink and have a non-alcoholic drink or whatever else it is. But I definitely feel like there's a certain degree of binge drinking, which is is definitely not beneficial for anyone.
Totally.
And it's easy to do it, right? When you are in a place where you're like, I just want to let go sort of thing. And you sort of go down that. But I guess that raises the question around, same with psychedelics, like, do you not think that psychedelics can be harmful as well if they're in certain environments?
Absolutely it can. I mean, anything can be harmful if it's treated with no respect,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think for me, the biggest part, the biggest lacking part for everyone is the education around the compound. Like all of us will drink from a young age because that's just what people do, but there's no education on what it actually can do for you physically and how it harms you. The same thing with psychedelics. Like there isn't enough information out there, and I guess this is the reason why I want to talk about it. So in terms of going back to how psychedelics changed me personally, was to go back a couple of steps. I got to a point where I needed change, and it was starting to affect myself, my personality, and I'm not the type of person to get down and never really been diagnosed with depression or anything, but I always want more and I expect more from myself as a human. So I got really sort of upset with myself, and I said to my wife, like, I've got to figure out an alternative way to move forward with myself as a person. So I started doing a whole bunch of research on the internet, and a real close friend, Henkus, back in South Africa, said to me, Bourne, you've got to get yourself to Peru, go to one of those, I guess, what do you call
ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca ceremonies or San Pedro ceremony. And I was like, well, what do you mean? It's just taking drugs again, And the more research I did, the more I realized that actually these are tools given to us by whoever your higher power you believe in to get over all these things. And there's so much information out there if you only just look for it. So I couldn't afford to leave the kids and wife and go spend a month in Peru. It was just out of the question. So it's funny how like the world works, and it brings things to you when your intentions are to find it. I found a guy out, and I won't mention him because it's what he's doing isn't exactly legal, unfortunately, because that's just the way that the government portrays plants to be. So I met up with a guy in New Zealand and spent a couple of days with him. And I was frightened like you wouldn't believe. Got in my car, shaking, 6 a.m. in the morning, I just said to my wife, I'm off. She didn't really know where I was going. Just because she doesn't always need to know that kind of stuff. She just knows, she needs to know I'm going to go somewhere to try and better myself. So I was like shivering in my boots the whole way there, 2-hour drive, arrived there. I've done enough research to understand what I had got myself into. So I had chosen San Pedro cactus, which is Wachuma, Hachuma, the grandfather spirit, which is a cactus, which is, the makeup is mescaline, right? And it's a plant-based medicine that the Peruvians and all over the South America have used as medicine since way back in the day. Met this guy, sat with him in his teepee, and he had this beautiful little holding in the middle of nowhere, bushes all around him. And we had an opening ceremony, which is really beautiful, actually. You sit in this amazing little teepee, and there's all sorts of, I guess, conjuring of good spirits and getting rid of evil spirits and saging and all that kind of stuff. And we drank this tea, and I kind of was still a little bit weird for me. I was like, fuck, what am I doing here? Like, this is a bit weird, but I'm here for a reason. And I kept having like a message in the back of my head just saying, just sort of sit it out. I'm shivering, I'm shaking. I've never really been a psychedelics guy. I've always been on the straight and narrow, drink, that's where I stay. Friends have always dabbled in that kind of stuff, but I never did because I was frightened of seeing things or what it is. That's for the reason, but it's not actually even like that. It's about how you prepare yourself and what your intentions are. So I set a bunch of intentions, and one of the intention on the day was to face my father face to face and to see what message he would give me so I could let go of all that trauma. Long story short, because I can talk the ears off your head, but I'm not going to, is that I'd taken the tea, and this shaman, you call him shaman, healer, whatever you want, he'd said to me, right now, you are off on yourself. Go walk in the bush and spend 7 hours by yourself. I will be behind you, just holding space for you and watching to make sure nothing serious happens. And I was like, fuck, what do you mean? You're going to leave me alone and I'm going to go and, trip out in the bush and deal with all the shit myself? And he says, yeah, you need to deal with it, and you'll have a spirit, the grandfather spirit, who will follow you, and you will hear messages in your head and listen to them. You're not going crazy. I was like, fuck, okay. Okay, see you later. Just if I call you, come and help me out, There's probably one of the most beautiful, other than the birth of my kids and the marriage of my wife, one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever experienced in my life. I had so many breakthrough moments in that one sitting, specifically sitting next to a tree in the middle of nowhere, cows surrounding, just beautiful, beautiful day. And this will sound crazy to a lot of people, but when you experience it, it's as real as it's real. My father had come to me in a not physical being, but a light being, and I could see the shape of his face, and he didn't say too much to me, but he hugged me and really hugged me. I could feel this light hugging me, and all of a sudden I heard, it's okay, let it go. And in that moment I could feel from my toes all the way up to the top of my shoulders this pressure and this intent, whatever it was, just release.
Wow. And
I started crying, and I was crying for about 3 hours, and it was I couldn't really believe it. I was still sitting back at the same time going, what the fuck just happened? Anyway, since that day I've become an advocate to psychedelic therapy. I've sat with Mind Medicine Australia. I try and get the message out to people. I've taken close friends there who have had beautiful experiences, and it's nothing to be frightened about. You in order to grow as a person, I believe you need to face the fears, let them go, and just be a good person. Being a good person to everybody. There's too many egos and too many agendas. Everybody just needs to just get along. And I know that's a lot easier than it is to actually do. But yeah, from that day, I just try to get that message out to people. And some people don't want to hear about it, and that's cool. They need to deal with what they need to deal with the way that they need to deal with it. But like, if I can help somewhere along the way, I think is why I'm here.
And so on that like path then of psychedelics, now I personally have only ever hallucinated twice. Well, done anything that it wasn't like I was taking psychedelics, and both of them have been in medical situations.
Yeah.
Where once was when they thought I'd broken my neck snowboarding.
Yeah.
And I was in the ambulance and I started tripping, and I was just like worst experience ever.
Yeah. And you were on something?
No. That was in the ambulance. They gave me stuff, and suddenly I was just like it was actually real intense. So I'm lying in the ambulance, I've got a neck brace on, and I'm like pinned down, basically. And then they gave me this stuff through a mask. I don't know exactly what
Probably
it was.
would have been ketamine.
Yeah, and then next minute, this head comes over the top of me, and it was just full zombie. And I was just like, this is not all good. And I think, like you said, it's the environment you're in, right? Of like how you see it. And then the other one, again, was medical. It was when my appendix was going on, and then I had, But like with that in mind, how do you think you can control it where, let's say there is a really positive element to it, right? Like what you were talking about, where you can sort of grow and
Really
challenge things that you've potentially had, right?
Yeah.
How can you have that positive, but then also enable it so that it's available to the wider society, where people will overindulge and things like that? Like, do you have
Well, I think you're never going to stop people overindulging in psychedelics and all sorts of class A drugs, right? And that's just the way it's always going to be. But in a controlled space, there's enough science and enough articles and papers to be able to break down your dosage to the exact amount for that exact kind of trip. And when you've got it done in a proper sitting, and you've got someone, either a healer or a therapist, which they're now doing in Australia, you can actually go to therapists in Australia who treat you with either psilocybin or MDMA or ketamine, and they've broken it down to the exact dose that you won't freak out, But those are spaces that have been created for people that don't feel comfortable going to this bush-like setting with pictures on the wall and this weird long-haired beard guy. They don't feel comfortable there. So I think it's amazing that Australia, and obviously America too, are creating proper therapy places where you can go and put an eye mask on, and they'll give you something that's basically, you could call it a medical grade psychedelic that's broken down into the exact milligram to take to get to those certain levels. So that's how I see it working. But in my opinion, I'm quite like, it's all the way or no way. And I like the natural bush, bearded, crazy guy. But they also know how to break it down into the exact dosage, right?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of asks your question. And to be honest with you, like a lot of people say they've taken psychedelics and they've freaked out or they've cried and they've puked or purged. That's the intention of some of the times what you need to go through to break through those really bad trauma situations. So, people say, I've had a bad trip. They've had a bad trip because they've just taken the drugs for recreational use rather than therapy uses, which is fine. I mean, you do whatever makes you happy. But a bad trip necessarily isn't a bad trip. It's actually releasing certain things that you have blockage in your system.
Yeah. Interesting. And so with that, do you feel like there will come a time in New Zealand? I mean, like, we obviously had the referendum around marijuana being legalized. Do you think there would come a point where in the near future that could be a reality?
To be honest, I'm not hopeful. To be honest, I think we're quite traditional and we stay in our lane. Australia is already doing it, so they're way ahead of us. We do have a ketamine clinic in Hamilton where you can go and have that therapy there in a comfortable setting. But in terms of having MDMA or acid plant medicine being administered in a therapy setting with actual doctors and therapists, I think we're a long way away. And that's just because the way that our government thinks. And I don't want to go into that kind of stuff because you know why, and everyone that listens to this podcast will think the same way. But yeah, we're a while away from that, in my opinion, unfortunately.
The thing that's also interesting being as like an agency where we deal with all sides, right? We've got corporates that we deal with 9 to 5, which are our clients. Not all of them are corporates, to be fair, but as a generalization, we've got corporates that we deal with, but then the people that do a lot of the creative work for agencies or just generally creatives, it's not uncommon, right, for them to be either leveling up, let's call it, for their creative mind, because it helps them get to a different place where they might take some mushrooms or something like that, and then suddenly their creative juices are amplified, and then suddenly that's how they come up with this amazing creative concept or whatever else. But I feel like it's one of those things where it's almost like people turn a blind eye to it because it's like you've got corporate life. We don't want to know how you came up with that concept, but
no, it's true. We just want to see it. We want to see the end result. Like, I mean, in terms of like the corporate environment, I'm heavily involved in the corporate environment. I'm customer facing some of the biggest retailers in New Zealand and Australia at a high level, general manager conversation like you and I are having, presenting and pitching ideas to them. And I find that microdosing specifically has helped immensely with mood, energy, creativeness, as long as it's treated properly and treated with respect. So I think it's a place for everyone, at every sort of level. And I think it'll get to that point. I mean, I hate the way that at the moment in America, like it's psychedelics and microdosing is this massive trend. Fluffy white pillows, pina coladas, and microdosing and ketamine and kombucha. It frustrates me that corporates and humans have to take something so special and create a marketing money-making scheme out of it. But that's going to happen with everything, And if that's the way it has to be portrayed for the normal person, if there's ever even such a thing, to be able to experience those experiences, then, whatever. But it has to be natural. The intentions have to be there. And you have to, the setting is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just touching on the corporate life, so tell me a bit more about what you've done in that space. I know you've done 10 years at Barker's in retail, so like apparel and stuff, but how did you get into that space through fashion and things like that?
Yeah, so, 25 years ago, I think, roundabouts, plus minus, might be lying, not sure. I studied fashion design and retail management back in South Africa, and I went to a top college there, and long story short, did really well, and then got chosen sort of five top students out of South Africa get taken into a trainee buyer program in one of the bigger major retailers there, and I learned retail from there, sort of worked my way up. And then got the opportunity someone said, look, Bourne, you're really good with people. You're sitting behind your desk, you're being creative, and you're looking at numbers, and you're putting ranges together. Come onto my side, and let's try and sell to those guys. Because I guess my point of difference has always been I can talk the language of a buyer and a planner because I've sat in that space. And then on the other side, so when I'm selling to people in that space, in the retail space, I talk their language to an extent, and I know what to say. I like to think I know what they want to hear, rather than just slapping a catalog down in front of them and saying tick the boxes. That's my point of difference, is connecting at that level. So stayed on the selling side for 10 years, and then came to New Zealand and worked for a couple of wholesalers selling into retailers. And then Barker's basically said, look, we want you to come and head up the buying. And I haven't been on that side of the world for a long time. I've been selling and creative and designing and developing product. But such a great company, I thought, like times are tough. Go and work for the company, see where it ends. And I ended up being there for 10 years. I was a senior buyer for a couple of years, but then I started to get a little bit bored, and I like to get out and talk people like I am to you, and creating relationships.
Yeah.
I said, look, guys, I'm kind of not really enjoying myself doing this anymore. I'm not a numbers guy. I get it. I get budgets, margins, and that kind of stuff, but don't put me in front of a spreadsheet for hours ticking boxes. It's just it's a waste of where my skills are.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, we're gonna create an area for you, and we're gonna create a role for you. And the role will be basically you'll go out and generate revenue outside of traditional retail. I was like, well, what does that mean? Just anything. We'll give you free range. We'll give you the exclusive rights to our supply chain, because they're fully vertically integrated. They do everything in-house straight to the factory. So that's a huge advantage for me. The message for me was to get other retailers and potential competitors to not look at us like a competitor. He has this amazing supply chain plus this design and development opportunity. Tap into it. And that's what I did for maybe 8 years, and grew the business substantially, and to a point where they bought another business that specifically did that, but on a much larger scale. And things don't always work out. And I just decided that I'd had enough of the apparel industry. Long 25 years, long slog, hard.
Yeah.
Designed that dog range for Barker's dog, and that almost sparked a new sort of like creative side to me, and I was excited about selling for the first time in a long time. And then started selling into some of the pet major retailers here, and they all just really loved working with me and said, we want you to come and work in the industry. And then got this new sort of role working with a company called Finneys, who has exclusive rights to a bunch of international brands. And yeah, that's what I'm doing, creating, designing, and selling product.
Cool. Well, considering I'm about to get a new dog, I'm hoping I get a new dog bowl, but
yeah, you can get a bowl. We'll get you a bowl.
Oh, that's cool. And so, what would you say some of the changes have been in that retail space, specifically apparel? Because I know apparel was a very dog eat world. But what would you say some of the changes have been since, let's talk more specifically to New Zealand, since you started to now? Have you seen any major changes?
Well, I guess if you talk South Africa versus New Zealand, there's the one major big difference is population, right? So South Africa, you've got 55 million people, and you've got massive retailers with 200, 300 stores across the country, which enables you in a head office level buying group to have buyers for all sorts of different categories, plus the planner. And the relationship with the buyer and the planner is we work together. The planner does the numbers and the buyer is the creative. They give you a shopping list and you buy what you think is going to sell. Yeah. In New Zealand, because it's so much smaller, 5 million people, whatever it is at the moment, in a small little hub in a retail store that has a retail brand or business has maybe 60 stores at most, the teams are really small, and to be a buyer here, you've got to be a buyer and a planner. You'll have a head planner, but you're pushing a lot of that planning work onto the buyer, and that person has to be able to do everything. And that's a lot to ask for a creative and a buyer. And the reason why it's like that is because we're so small, and you've got to be able to do it all. So in an environment like Barker's or Hallenstein's, some of those majors, you as a buyer are buying some of the production, QA, you're involved in every step of the way, and you're in control of all of that, which is a lot. You don't really get to focus on the product all the time, which is the key. So in my opinion, there's some really talented buyers and planners in New Zealand specifically.
And how does that relationship work with marketing? Because you have marketing teams, use agencies for certain work, but how does that work in terms of your relationship directly with the marketing team? Is there...
So I think the marketing is obviously like a real key element to the whole business, right? And the way that it works in those businesses, well, I'm talking about Barkers specifically. There's some really amazing, talented marketing people in that business, and that's Max, Clicks, Barkers, and I think that the key to that is having them involved in the ranging reviews from like entry level. A buyer goes overseas, buys a product, brings it back, develops, design, changes, ranges. The marketing team are involved in that from a real low level, so they get to understand the product and they talk to the buyers and they build a relationship around each category of the buying team, and then they'll go off with the buyer and create those campaigns and whatever it is to be able to market the product. Like they need to market it.
Yeah.
That answer your question?
Yeah, I guess that does. But I guess the key thing being that it's kind of more the buyers that choose what the marketing team has to create.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the buyers will have a good eye, but ultimately it's the buyers and the buying manager and the general manager's decision to what are we going to shoot as a campaign, what capsule ranges are we going to do. They might do a campaign on a boat or to the sea. What's the right product that fits that campaign, vice versa.
So it's just interesting because some clients or businesses that I've talked to, some of them rely on agency to do certain deliverables. So whether it's video, whether it's photo shoots, whether it's the concept and strategy element.
Yeah.
But then there's some businesses where it's like they want to have everything in-house because they know that they've got full control. And it's like you were saying, where in New Zealand you do have more control, right? Because it is smaller and people do more things, but you also don't specialize necessarily as much into that niche or skill set, which you potentially are going to be better at. And I guess what I was trying to say is, like, do you find that it is important to work with agency life?
I think it is. Yeah. It's all good and well to try and do everything in-house and, cut costs and make as much margin as you can. But unfortunately, not everybody specializes in agency type of stuff. And there actually are a major value to the business and what they do. We could probably do it ourselves, but they do so much of a better job looking at it from the outside into the in, and just creating something new and engaging with customers that we probably might not even thought of.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important.
Cool. And I'm going to take a slight cross direction here because I want to go back to surfing.
Yeah.
We've done enough corporate. Let's go back to surfing. So have you... We talked a little bit about surfing in pools.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a pool wave coming to New Zealand.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion of the fact that we're going to be able to surf in a nice chlorinated pool?
I'm fizzing. And I'll tell you the reason why is, I've lived here for almost 20 years and I love surfing. I told you how much I love surfing. Living where we live, I mean, I live in the middle of the city, St. Heliers, Glendowie. It takes me 50 minutes to get to the beach. Yeah. And if I can, I would surf every day. But, 18 or 20 years, whatever it is, I spend a lot of time in the car just to go for an average surf most of the time. We have great waves here, but it's not always great. And I think that, Aucklanders specifically, it's a huge opportunity for us to get into the water. But not only just that, it's an opportunity for average to intermediate surfers to level up. It's a consistent wave. It's the same wave
as well. Like
there's different levels of waves. You've got basic, intermediate, and then advanced type category waves. And I think it's an opportunity for everybody to get better and have fun and be able to be in a space where they want to be in whenever they want. From what I understand is that it'll be, real early mornings to late at nights. I think what they're doing is, and I know to an extent what's happening, they're building a whole hub around it where you'll have retail, you'll have yoga, you'll have a skate park, a BMX track, and even housing development around it where people will buy housing around that and be able to surf with certain things. I think the real important thing that I guess Aventure and the wave pool have, the opportunity that I see within the New Zealand surfing core environment, there's a bunch of awesome board rider clubs. Some beaches have too many board rider clubs, and that's fine. That's just the way it is. Avon should have an opportunity to create a New Zealand board riders club that's all inclusive.
Yeah.
You know, granny, grandpa, fucking 2-year-old, 3-year-old. There's no ego. There's no line-up preference in the water.
It's just
you wait your turn.
Yeah.
You know, everybody gets a chance, and if the guy misses the wave, you let him in front of you again. It's up to you if you want to be a good person or not. So the opportunity for me and for New Zealand specifically is to create an inclusive environment where there is no more ego. Everybody's involved. There's coaching. It's going to be incredible.
And you can have cool competition. Like the thing I found, so I did the Melbourne one, which I briefly mentioned to you, but like the thing I found interesting about that was that it's quite different to surfing a normal wave, because out of nowhere, suddenly you're at this little point and there's like markers and stuff where it's like you surf here if you're on the intermediate or advanced or beginner or whatever. So you know where you're starting.
Yeah.
But out of nowhere, suddenly you just get this surge. And then it's just like, as soon as you see the surge, start paddling.
Yeah.
And like, but it's like a choo-choo train because there's a natural rip that pretty much gets created up one side.
Yeah.
Because the wave is either you either choose to go left break or right break.
Yeah.
And you catch your wave, and then the moment you finish catching your wave, you just go to the side. You barely even have to paddle, and you just get sucked up to the wave. But like,
that's awesome.
As an exhausting surf, like I think in an hour you can catch a maximum of 12 waves.
Which is
more than most people catch in 2 hours.
Yeah, in a week.
Oh yeah, in a week. Yeah. But
I think it's a game changer for everything, you know, just to create a place for a family to go and spend some time, especially if there's retail created around it.
Yeah.
Awesome environments. I think I personally can't wait, and I know a lot of my friends can't wait. And there's an element of hardcore, old school surfers who say, "Oh, I'll never go to the pool." That's cool, whatever, you know, I get it. That's fine. But for me specifically, I can take my family there. I can have a couple of surfs. They can all surf. They can go and watch a surf movie in the big screen, buy a popcorn or whatever, have lunch there and spend the day there, you know, like, I think Auckland really, really needs it. And people say that it's expensive, but you know, what's expensive if your mental health is in a good space?
Yeah. Or on top of that, is it expensive if you go out surfing in a normal shore break wave and you're only going to catch maybe 1 or 2 waves, or you can go there and guaranteed catch 12 waves?
Absolutely.
Well, as long as you're fit enough, to be fair, because catching 12 waves is genuinely quite exhausting. Yeah. But even for my partner who was in Melbourne, she did it as well. So she did the beginner surfing wave, and then after that there was the intermediate wave, and then there's like all the different levels in between. You can go like intermediate fast, and then there's like an intermediate turns one and things like that. It's like crazy how they can control the wave.
That's amazing.
But for the beginner wave, it was insane. She caught so many waves. And it's all green waves that you're catching, so you're not catching whitewater, which is all part of it. There's a whitewater wave section at the beginning, but like,
that's incredible. And you know, there's also the aging surfer element to it. You know, I've got a lot of older silverback friends who are great, are still great surfers, but you know, you get to a point where you 50, 60 and you're going out to Piha and your pop-up's a little bit slower than you used to be. You hardly catch any waves. This is a whole new element for them to be able to actually enjoy surfing again, I think. You know, you just got to just take the ego out of it and just go there and enjoy it. I mean, there's friends that I have that clock in at 8:30 till 5:30 and there's no way out of that. You've got the whole winter, and we know how shit the winter is here, and that our winters don't mean good waves. They mean big, massive southwesters and just shit weather. Who wouldn't want to clock in, who doesn't have that freedom like I might have to be able to go surf whenever I want, to finish work, go home, have dinner, tuck the kids in and drive down the road for an evening night surf?
Yeah. It's dreamy.
No-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm fizzing.
You know, it's definitely going to be a game changer. But to be fair, you've just got to maybe move down to the mount as well. And
it was on the cards, but... You know, like we almost sold up and we almost went down there. I just think I'd struggle with the flatness that it has sometimes. But then
Fitness
again,
being
like no waves for so
Oh.
long, like months, 2 months on end. Although that's changed. The seasons have changed.
This season's been pretty good. But in saying that though, like thinking about like Billy Strymond and things like that, like the other day we had a big swell come through and he drives over from Raglan.
And it's only an hour
and it's
and
only
a half.
hour and a half.
Yeah.
So like it's not that bad. Like I feel like in Auckland you've got a 50-minute drive.
Yeah.
Like when I was living here, it takes a while to get anywhere really. It's the same distance to get from wherever to everywhere.
It's a mission.
Whereas like the one thing that is nice is the amount you've got a 5-minute drive to the beach.
Yeah.
From pretty much anywhere if you live anywhere on that coast, and you can surf anywhere along such a long stretch.
Yeah.
You've got Matakana Island, which
The
is...
waves are good when there's waves.
Yeah. But then if you want to, you can always just cruise over to Raglan. And I mean, yeah, it's an extra 40 minutes maybe than say going for an average surf, but then you've also got a point break at Raglan, which is... So tell me a little bit more about like your recent surf that you've had in Raglan.
So I'm lucky. My wife sort of allows me that space when I need that space. I've got a bunch of friends that stay down there, so I can go and sleep on a good friend's couch, or I've got a camp van outside that I take with, but at the moment it's just too cold. So when did I go last? I went last on Thursday and Friday last week. I go down as much as I can. It's only 2 hours. It's not a big drive. And it's, I guess why I go down there is just because there's so much time on the wave to practice. And for me, surfing is really important from a progression point of view. I believe that you're never too old to learn. So I do a bunch of coaching with a bunch of different people, which I'm really, really grateful for. You know, a lot of people these days, the ego is so big that they believe that they're good enough, and then they video themselves and they go, fuck, I'm terrible. I still look at myself and I think I'm terrible. But I've changed my surfing because of video and technique changes and etc. And Raglan, because of the wave, allows you to do that. So yeah, I went down last week for a couple of days. It wasn't amazing, but it was awesome. I had 1 or 2 really good waves. And I've spent a lot of time out west at the moment where I've had lots of average surfs, and it's a little bit sort of like, it's a downer, you know? So that was awesome. Yeah.
How good is it watching videos of yourself though?
And
you said like, I like just thinking about it where it'll be like, even like thinking about snowboarding and stuff, you'll do like a jump and you'll be like, man, I got so high on that jump. And then your mate will video it and you've got like this high, and it's like, yeah, man, that was sick. Yeah. But like, it's funny because it is like, it's so humbling. I feel like when
so humbling.
Yeah.
You know, like for a long time, I thought I was okay until I started doing the coaching, and my hands are flaying everywhere and I'm doing turns in all sorts of different ways. But like anything, it's the only way you get better, you know?
Yeah.
So very humbling. Still humbling as.
Well, I feel like the water, I was actually talking to someone the other day from Canada about this, and we were saying like, what do you think is more scary, snowboarding or surfing? And I think I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that. But like, I definitely think surfing is, and the reason I think that is because I feel like with surfing, it's quite easy to potentially put yourself in quite a bad position, and there's quite dire consequences. Yeah. Whereas I feel like snowboarding or skiing, to get to a point where you can heli ski, you have to have gone through a certain degree of levels before it's really dangerous. Whereas, yes, you can go on a mountain, break your wrists or whatever, but it's not like getting into a set like, for example, in Hawaii, where I felt like I genuinely nearly drowned. Well, I did nearly genuinely drown, but like, and you get held down for like 30 seconds, which doesn't seem like long, but when you're getting in a washing machine and then you come up and you need air again, and then suddenly you've got another one coming. Yeah. I feel like it's,
you know, surfing's, I don't know. I think you'd think that we'd be injured a lot more than what we are. Like I, myself, and lots of friends we put ourselves in some pretty hairy situations.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time we come out okay. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've banged my head on my board, broken my ankle. But a lot of the time, like I surf, I don't surf, you know, crazy waves, but I like to put myself in uncomfortable, hollow situations. It's just what gets me excited. And half the time I come out okay when I should have hit the bottom or broken my neck. So it really is time spent in the water, understanding the elements, understanding the situation you're putting yourself into. But then again, things can go really, really wrong. So yeah, surfing can be really dangerous, or a lot of the time you end up just hitting the water and sinking. You know, it really depends.
Yeah. Cool. And I got one final question for you. What would your superpower be?
My superpower would be never aging.
Never aging.
Yeah. I'd like to be 25 forever. And then with that comes with never aging, empathy, and having the unlimited power to help people in serious need all the time.
So would you eventually die and you'd just be 25 for your whole life? Or are you saying you would never age, you get to 25 and then you're that age forever?
Forever.
So, but you would still see lots of other people die though around you?
Yeah.
Wow, I've never had that one before.
That's what I would love to be, and help as many people as I can at that age.
Wow.
Yeah. I could have said flying. I could have said
flying's number one. That is definitely the number one choice everyone says.
I could have said every time I talk, $1,000 note comes out of my mouth. But that's not important to me.
Yeah.
You know, we all have someone to answer to one day. And the older I get, in the last sort of 6 years, like, we got one chance at this, you know, and a lot of people need good people out there. And if I can help people in need wherever I can, even if you've been a dickhead to me, then you can call on me. And that's what I think my power is. Yeah.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah.
On that note, nice to have you on. Sink or swim.
Cool, thanks.
Sweet. Thanks for tuning in to another Squid Group podcast. If you're looking for a marketing partner to grow your brand, business, or event, contact us here at Squid Group. See you next time.